Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. And for this very special New Year's kickoff celebration of the Books That Make You show, we're going to talk about books that help you to stock up on your TBR list. First, I want to quickly tell you about novelties, because what I like to drink in my little teacup when I read, because when you read books, there's just something that goes along with it better than anything else in the world, and that's tea, right? So Novelties has this great bookish line. I know that looks like a book,
Nice.
Right?
Yes.
It's a tea tin. Check that out.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
They're adorable. This one is the Peter Rabbit inspired one. We also have a Peter Pan inspired one. They have Cup of Cthulhu. They have, oh my God, this one just cracks me up. It's Pride and Peppermint. Anne of Green Tea Gables. They have all of these bookish teas. They are not only fun, but they're delicious, and they're perfect for any book lover, any tea lover. And of course, if you love books, chances are you love tea. So check them out. It's novelteatins.com. And right now, our very special guest today for our New Year show is Robert Yehling. Now, we're going to talk about the TBR. We're also going to talk about Robert and his writing and his books and his company and his podcast. One of the reasons I invited Robert to be with me today is because he's one of those prolific individuals that is just so many things. And I thought that was a good, kind of segue into this new year. Because when we get into the new year, we're stocking up on our TBR. We're thinking about the books that we're going to be reading, the book that we might want to be writing. So this is a combination of everything to kick off the new year. Robert, hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Desiree. It's such a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I'm a tea addict. So having novelty, I wasn't really even aware of them until I came on the show today. And wow, I guess I'm a new customer because that's perfect for me. I just go through so much. And thank you again for the New Year's show. I think it's so great to be able to kick off the new year by having kind of this, this full broad conversation about writing and being a writer and learning how to read books as a writer, when you read books, learning how to read them as a writer might be writing them. And it just kind of lays out a really nice, path for the whole year for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. This time of the year, you see a lot of reading lists online, a lot of people posting what their list should be. And TBR, just in case people are wondering what that acronym is, it's to be read list. So this is the chance to think about your TBRs, and we're going to talk about ours as well a little bit. So let me ask you this, Robert. I'm going to throw the big question at you. What is it that you are reading this year, or the end of this year and into next year? What's on your TBR?
Well, I've been a kind of a multi-genre reader for a long time. So I usually have 5 or 6 books going at the same time. So right now I'm actually reading an older book, Where is Joe Merchant by Jimmy Buffett, who, as good of a songwriter as he is, he's a fantastic novelist. He is really, really good. He's funny. He's kind of like Tim Dorsey, Carl Hiaasen, that kind of a lineage, only all of his stuff takes place on boats and planes in the Caribbean. And it's a really great, it's a mystery, but it's laced with a lot of humor and of course his character sketches and his scenes in the Caribbean are just sublime because he spent so much time down there with his boat and his plane. And then another one I'm reading is Delia Owens, Where the Crawdaddy Sings. And that was a bestseller a few years ago, a great book. And I recently spent a couple of years in the South. And so and which leads to another thing I always tell people is it's always fun to read a book where it's set.
Yeah.
or
Oh,
to read a
yeah.
book where the author came from or something like that, because you get a visceral experience that goes beyond just sitting here at home in LA reading the book. You're out in the middle of it. And to that, I'm rereading for about the fourth time Annie Dillard's classic Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. That was the book I first read about 40 years ago that turned me into a poet. That was it. It's such a great book. And again, that's set on a small creek in Virginia. And I read that book whenever I'm getting ready to write a book that's really tough for me. And I'm doing my memoir now, which is kind of tough. I always go back to that book because it just really loosens up the writing muscles and gets me going.
Oh, I love that. And I want to ask you about your memoir because you just threw that big old matzo ball out there for me to catch. And I'm going to catch it. But first, I want to just, underscore the fact that when you are a writer, you need to be a reader. And you are so prolific in the fact that you're nonfiction and you're fiction, and you write for yourself, you write for others, and you just have this, this all-encompassingness, if that's a word, about you. So, what are your thoughts on the different genres and what people should be putting on their TBR? I mean, should they kind of stay within their wheelhouse? And, if they only like, thriller fiction, so should they only read that? Or what are your thoughts about branching out into other genres and other types of books?
Well, I'm always going to advocate for branching out because I believe as a writer, there was a saying I was taught many years ago when I was a 20-year-old newspaper journalist, and that is great writers read great writing. And what I learned about that is when we're writing, and it's really, when we write, no matter what we're writing, it's really important to read diversely because it helps our brains to be able to make connections and stuff we otherwise wouldn't make. And the example I love to give on that is of a very narrow genre writer, Louis L'Amour, who is great, arguably the greatest Western writer ever. Louis wrote in his memoir, which he wrote in 1988, right before he died. He put in his reading lists from when he was a young man in his mid-20s. He put in reading lists for 3 straight years, and he read about 135 books a year. And which, of course, with no distractions back then, it was a lot more plausible and feasible than it would be now. But if you look at the list, he had like stuff like the fall of the Roman Empire, the Art Nouveau artists in Paris, and stuff about the monarchy in England. He had nature books set from Australia and China and everywhere else. And I just read that, and then you go into his books and reread a couple of his books after knowing those reading lists, and you're going, aha. And he has these insights that another Western writer just doesn't have because that writer might be narrowly focused on that genre. And that's a perfect example of what reading widely and then going right into your genre and then delivering. So what I tell readers, is, absolutely read whatever you can get in your favorite genre. But also try some of the other ones because you gain more knowledge in general, more knowledge, wisdom, and insight. But it adds to the reading experience because it's something totally new. It's a different type of adventure. You might, like, if someone likes to read romance books and then they switch to poetry, like something really heavy, like Szymborska, who's one of the top women poets in Poland's history. That it just makes a difference. It really makes a mark on you. So that's what I would suggest. And I forgot to add on my reading list, and this is good, is a person you and I had the pleasure of seeing do a keynote at the Southern California Writers Conference a few years ago, Joe Ide. When we saw him speak a few years ago, Joe had written the first 3 books of his series, and now he's up to 5. And I think I think you know what I'm laughing about already. And Joe, he's a great crime thriller writer based in Los Angeles. And Joe's very interesting. And this is the kind of stuff you learn when you read outside the box and about the authors and stuff. But Joe's a Japanese American who grew up in South Central LA. So he speaks like urban, African American, so an urban Black. That's how he talks. So Japanese American gets up and talks with that with that way of manner of speaking. And the first thing, it's just kind of startling at first, but he's a funny writer, really funny, brutally funny at times. His narrative and his pacing, everything is spotless. I think he's the best new crime thriller writer in America today. And so I forgot to add him. I did want to mention him though.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I'm getting just a little bit of feedback on my end when I talk. There we go. Now I sound better. Sorry about that. Yeah. One of the things too, you mentioned Louis L'Amour and reading outside of your genre. I think it's important if you're a genre writer to know your genre. So you should read your genre and know the rules of your genre. And if it's romance, you really probably want to have that happily ever after, etc. And it's just interesting that you bring up Louis L'Amour, because just the other day I was talking with somebody and I was talking about how much I loved the movie True Grit. And they're like, that's a Western. You don't like Westerns. I was like, but I love story. A good story is a good story is a good story. So when you're reading history and other genres, absolutely, it can pour into what you're writing and just make it more vibrant and more fulfilled. Let me ask you this for writers now, because you help so many writers on their journey. That's actually what your company is, Word Journeys, which I love that name, because you'll help shepherd a book along if it needs to be shepherded. You'll help ghostwrite it. You'll help edit it. You'll help with all these different areas and stages of the book. So let me ask you this. What kind of writing advice do you have for writers in the new year? Is there anything that they should do writing-wise to get their book finished?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have a few simple answers, I would say, that I would start with. Well, since it's the new year, if you aren't already doing so, get a journal and write in it every day. And I'd further challenge you. So first of all, I would say write for a week or two, but write every day, even if it's only half a page, but write every day to get in the habit of writing daily. That's first and foremost, because lots of books are started and never finished because the writer burns out after a week or two, and then they've never had the regular daily writing habit to start with. So it's easy to back out of it because it's not easy to write a book. Secondly, in your journal, once you've had the week or 2 weeks to get yourself going, I suggest writing about something different every day. That could be a different topic. It could be a character sketch, write about someone you know or don't know, you're making one up. And then also, don't be afraid to switch genre. So like if one day I'm writing, just dialogue or something, or maybe if I'm just writing a romantic scene, maybe the next day I'll write a poem, and the next day after that an essay, and the next day after that I'll sketch out a landscape scene for a novel or something, or I'll just write about the museum I just went through that day, which is my third bit of advice, and that is cross-pollinate your experience, cross-pollinate your writing. And by that, I mean, find things that feed your brain creatively, that don't involve the energy output of writing. So museums are always great to go to, see whether it's art or sculpture or whatever. That's all. It gives you all kind of inspiration. Go for walks, take your brain with you and figure out things while you're walking. Make a meal from scratch using every ingredient you can think of, multicolors, etc. But let your creative brain just take off. Little things like that. Listen to music. Music's always great to listen to, whether we're writing. Like when I'm writing, I'll listen to something really evocative and provocative that stirs the neurons in the brain, such as classical music's always great for that. The Japanese artist Kitaro, he's good. But then when I'm done writing for the day, it's rock and roll, because I'm done and I'm ready to, but that has a purpose. It loosens up the energy so that when I go for that run or that walk to think through the story, I'm getting all new ideas. So it's really important to do things on the side, but absolutely on the journal, use your journal as a chemistry lab. Think of it as a chemistry lab and not as a diary. That's really important for writers. So if you're working out, if you need to work out dialogue, well, let your character talk on your journal page. No one's ever going to see it probably. And then you'll have it, and that'll just make you more refined when you start writing it in the book. And so that's my biggest advice. Start with the journal. Also read in your genre more, as you said, and try to expand both your reading list and your types of things you write about. Because once you do that, then when you sit down to write an essay or an article or a chapter or a book or a short story, whatever it is you're writing, or a poem, you're going to find that connections, that you're going to connect the dots, and your story is going to flow a lot more mellifluously than if you just tried to start from scratch on it. Like, it's just like starting a car on a cold morning. You always let it run for 10 minutes before you go. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah. Great analogy. Get those creative juices just flowing in so many ways. And I just wanted to show you really quick. That's kind of my idea when I'm reading. This is on my TBR, by the way. It's The Disordered Cosmos by Dr. Chanda Prescott Weinstein. And what I love about this is it's nonfiction, but she's pulling in her real experiences. And I am just getting into this book that covers the science. We're talking about quarks and dark matter, but then we're also talking about the melanin in the skin. And, the fact that she is one of less than 100 African-American scientists to have gotten a degree in physics in the United States. Things like that, where now I'm pulling in culture, topics of our times, things that are important about society as well as science. So I just wanted to kind of give this a shout out, because I feel like it fits in, for my TBR as well. And I just wanted to share really quick. I have a favorite too. I know Laurel Ann Hill.
I have worked with her before, thanks to you, actually.
So I suggest you check this out. This is her latest book. This is a mystical, magical, young adult fiction. And I know Laurel the way I do. She meticulously researches. And this sprung out of when she was researching her own family lineage. So I just wanted to give this a shout out. And then for those of us who might be feeling a little cranky, I adore this fiction or nonfiction book that has a humorous take. It's kind of like the anti-self-help book, because it's basically saying embrace your crankiness, and that's by Stephen Joseph. So I just want to really quickly show you a few of mine too. So I think
and I'll throw out a couple more too. And to your point about Disordered Cosmos, you made a really good point, and I wanted to bring that up. And that is that the book has got science, and it's got, all physics and probably quantum physics too, I would imagine. But the thing you said that makes a story good is it has the human connection. And that is something I just can't emphasize enough. I see so many manuscripts from writers, and I mean, their scene descriptions are absolutely beautiful. The writing's poetic. It's just riveting. The languaging is so nice and stuff, but they don't have their characters nailed down. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen on that situation 99.9% of the time is they're not going to engage the reader. And so no matter what kind of book we're writing, we really have to have a personal story, whether it's the character or the subject of the book or whatever, that I, the reader, can relate to and engage in. which is obviously what you did with the book you were showing a minute ago. And like, for instance, and I'll toot my own horn here because you kind of gave me permission to at the beginning of the show. I have a novel out, in fact, just for our viewers and listeners. Desiree actually was the publicist on this book, Voices, which is kind of my rock and roll novel I always wanted to write. Now, Voices, you read it on one level, and it's just a bang up rock and roll tour from an old rock band making a reunion tour, and they're very famous, blah, blah, blah. So the music and the fun and the touring and all the stuff that happens on rock and roll tours, all that fun and frivolity and everything else is in the book, and it's really entertaining and stuff. But the real story is about the lead singer, who's a rock music legend, his young daughter, who's a singer, and then his long lost love child daughter, who's older and lives in Italy. So the real story, and I'll just tell you the log line, which is something every writer should learn how to do, because you have to have this skill when you go to writers' conferences and pitch editors and agents, or when you pitch an agent or an editor by other means. It's called a log line, and it's really one or two sentences that get right to the crux of the story, to the point where the person who hears it doesn't want to let you go. So my log line for Voices is a father-daughter, lost daughter relationship story set against the last 50 years of rock and roll.
I love it. I love it. And yes, I love it.
Well, my publicist helped me do the log line. I thought I'd tell you that, Desiree.
That's fabulous. Well, you're keying in on something. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyways, so in Voices, again, the point is, going back to the book you put up, is I just could have made it a bunch of rock and roll stories, because I've toured with bands, I've covered them, I've done books with musicians. I have a ton of stories, but the human element is what turned a bunch of stories into a novel that's done pretty well since it came out. That's what did it.
Yeah. And I just want to key in on the fact that ultimately the reason we human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, love stories is because when we can crawl into somebody else's skin and see the world through their eyes, we are learning what it is that we learn in life. We're hardwired to want to know other people's stories, how they deal with it, what they do, their reactions, their emotions, their hopes, their fears. So that just ties into what it means to be human. And you're right. So many writers, especially novice writers, just want to key in. Here's my plot. Here's, my arch going up, and then it comes down, and it's sci-fi. And so there's great gadgets in it, and there's this and that. But it's that human element, like you so eloquently stated. So let me ask you this, Robert, since you're writing your memoir, and you kind of said you're struggling with it. Can we take a moment for the editor to maybe heal thyself? What's going on with your memoir?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I'm a ghostwriter, and I've edited a bunch of books, and I'm always dipping into people's books and helping them write them. Behind all that is a real aversion to sharing my own story in full. And it's always been that way. And I've, obviously being a professional writer for 45 years now, I've had to learn how to self-promote, because if you can't self-promote, you can't survive in this business these days. And I know a lot of people have trouble with that. They're just saying, oh, I don't want to promote myself. That's, I'm blowing my own horn. Who wants to hear it? Well, the answer is you have to do it in the context of your books to get them published, or to get sales these days. You just have to. But so I've had an aversion to telling my own story, but finally, it's time. So there's actually going to be two. The first one is going to be called Of Running Mind, which is it's a double entendre, and it's of course about my last 20 years of racing and coaching, and running the Boston many times after turning 45, and just all I've learned about life from running, and then working with autistic and PTSD and bipolar and other kids with mental health challenges who were on my cross country teams and did really well with it because it's a perfect sport. The second half of it is neuroscience, and I have a racing mind, and I've spent my life struggling to, keep it in balance, which of course things like meditation and stuff really help with that, and prayer and other things I do. So it's also looking at how movement and walking and running and being out in nature and so forth help soothe that. But it also looks at how writing, journaling and stuff like that can help work with that as well. So we just look at the running mind from, use the metaphor of running to get into the real part of the memoir, which is, exploring how to deal with the brain when you have these things going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, will we see your memoir in 2022?
Yeah, it'll be out early 2023.
2023. Okay.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. What do you have? You told us all about voices, which I love, because you've worked on so many, probably like 150, and I'm not exaggerating, books over
I've edited, about 175 by now.
Wow. Okay. So what's hot on the plate of Robert Yehling right now? What is the book that you have out now, or the book that you might have worked on that you want to tell us about quick?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I'm really proud to announce, and I'm announcing it now on your show for the first time, that a book that I've partially ghostwritten and worked on with the author the first iteration of this was in 2002. So this is 19 years ago. And it's Dr. Gail Madeleine Randall's book, Soul Doctoring, and Dr. Randall she's a trained gastroenterologist, but she also practices in 20 different modalities, from shamanic healing to Ayurveda to traditional Chinese medicine. And she's been one of the nation's top medical herbalists for 40 years. So what she does when you go in her office is you go in to see a doctor and you get 20 ways to treat something coming through her. And so she's a remarkable healer. She's even up to COVID. I mean, her protocols, only one of her patients has had COVID, which is, that's in 2 years. So it took us 19 years to get this book finally done. And she's, tomorrow she's signing her contract. So we're going to do the contract we are signing the contract, doing the little contract ceremony. So I typically am a very fast writer, and, some books I've written in 6 months and some books in 3. This took 19 years because it was also a timing thing with all the changes in medicine. So I'm really excited about that. And then I just finished working on a book called Boy from the East by Tomei Kuczynski Robertson. And it's actually a novel loosely based on her grandfather's experience in escaping Poland and getting to America right after World War II ended. And that I believe that book's got film written all over it. So I've already started making contacts in Hollywood for that. And we just finished yesterday on that. So that was pretty exciting. And then on a overall business front, I would say that we're expanding. I mean, just like you are, we have so many people that need editing services and ghostwriting services. And there's just no way that I personally can do everything, because it's not easy to ghostwrite a book. And so, so we're expanding. And so I have a new business partner, and Rob Weinberg, who I saw in here briefly this morning. And so we're basically going to make Word Journeys more expansive in the areas of editing services and ghostwriting and things like that. So I'm excited about that because, during the pandemic, just as I know you experienced with your business, we got a lot bigger fast. And that's simply because everybody that didn't have a chance to hasn't had a chance to write a book suddenly did. And that, in our case, that's what happened. And so I'd always been a kind of a solopreneur and or a subcontractor, depending on what the situation was. And so now we're a team of 6, and then we'll go up to about 12 after the first of the year.
That's fabulous. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, if there was ever a hidden, I mean, there aren't very many hidden blessings from COVID, in my opinion, but that was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes we need something to kind of rattle our cage a little bit and get us thinking and doing things in different ways. It's that phoenix rising out of the ashes, right? There's always that positive thing that never would have been there if we hadn't gone through something that was really difficult.
Right.
It happens. Really quick too, you have a podcast. You had me on your show not too long ago. So tell us about your podcast so people can.
Yeah, and before I tell you about the podcast, we want to invite you on our show again, right? At a timely manner, 3-4 weeks, whatever, before the next BookFest.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay. I will absolutely be there. Count on me.
Okay, we'll have you back because I'll say it. BookFest, in my eyes, well, first of all, it's brilliant that you were able to get that going. Secondly, it's the best online. It's the best online book festival conference, I think, in the country. I really do. And the way that you're able to get the level of authors that you've gotten in such a short time, that's just amazing. I mean, my business I've been in this business a very long time. I mean, Word Journeys just celebrated its 25th anniversary in October. And I just got to say, that's one of the most innovative things I've ever seen. And my business partner and I have just been, I've showed it to him, and it's marvelous. I mean, it's absolutely marvelous. And it also solves a major problem. And that is a lot of writers simply and geographically cannot get physically to a writer's conference. Mm-hmm. And secondly, those that have limited incomes or lower incomes, whatever, sometimes that can get costly as well. Yeah. So I just want to commend you. That's one of the best things that's happened in the book business in a long time is BookFest. So congrats.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And we're going to have you as part of the next BookFest. BookFest happens in the spring and the fall. And you're right. We've done it 4 times already.
I know, it's amazing.
But yeah, when we first started it, we actually named it LA BookFest because we thought, LA BookFest. And then immediately I realized, because I saw the traffic from around the world, and it's like, no, love you, Los Angeles, but this doesn't need to be a regional thing. This is a world thing. So thank you for the high praise.
Your platform's global. I mean, it's like I said, it's one of the most brilliant new things I've seen in this business in a long time. So congrats.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. And then as far as our show goes, Front Page Pass, I did a play on Backstage Pass from my music background, which as a former rock and roll DJ, you might appreciate.
I get it.
And so what we do is we bring writers on, authors, we bring on educators, we bring on, people who are doing great work in the publishing world, such as you, although you're also an author. And we just have it's a free-flowing conversation, a lot about what they're working on. So we'll bring on, and I'll say this, we bring on authors. We like to bring them on right after their books came out, so that they can get a nice little publicity thing. But also, I find that when the book has just come out, that they're really on top of describing their book, which is a really good thing for everybody because to get ready for media interviews or signings. And so we do that. And then my partner in crime, so to speak, with that is Alexa Black, who was unable to be here today. She's recovering from surgery, but so Alexa, so I've been in the business for a long time. I'm older. She's 30 years old, but she's already been in the business 10 years. So she started young as well. And It's just a really nice dynamic between the two of us. So that's what we do. It's an hour at a time, and it's on all platforms plus YouTube.
I love it.
And the new episodes come out every Tuesday.
Excellent. And you and Alexa are just magnificent together as co-hosts. And I love your show. And yes, we will have her and you come back again sometime when she can be here too, because that was the original plan. Robert Yehling, tell us really quick, where can people go to find out more about you, your business, your books? Give us the details.
Sure. It's wordjourneysliterary.com. Wordjourneysliterary.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and then as far as for those who are interested in buying my book specifically, we have a sales page or a landing page actually on my website, and also you can Google me or go on Amazon and it'll come up. So both the co-written books, the ghostwritten books, and my own will come up on that.
Excellent. Robert Yehling, thank you so much for joining us for our very special New Year's edition of the Books That Make You show.
All right. Happy New Year, everyone. And I hope you read and write more than you ever have.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for joining us on the Books That Make You show. Please find us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and now on TikTok. Plus, of course, we're on YouTube. Please ring the bell and subscribe so you don't miss one single episode. Until next time, all of my bibliophile friends, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.